Hey, what's up everybody? In this crash course tutorial for Shadows of Esteren by Studio Agate, I'm going to go over Bestiary and Feondas. Let's get into it.
Cybernation Uncensored.
All right, so the examples that I'm going to go over today in this video are from Book 2 Travels. So if you don't have that book or PDF, I recommend getting it. It not only covers some Bestiary and some Feondas and just other fun travel rules and things, which I might do a little quick crash course on travel, but it also has different lore and information about locations in Tree Kazel. It's a really awesome book, and I recommend getting it. And in this video, I'm going to go over some of the Bestiary and how that kind of works, and the Feondas examples that book gives. But I'm not going to go into all the details about that stuff. The book elaborates on each one of those things in different ways, and it really brings them to life and gives you examples of ways to use them and things like that. Again, I recommend getting Book 2 Travels and really diving into that as a game leader. It's almost essential to bring Tree Kazel to life and to give you some tools for encounters and locations and things like that. But let's get into some of these things. Let's go over the animals first. You'll see here a chart and a list of sample animals, basically, some examples. But I want to read about this, a little section here directly from the book, because it expresses what I've been saying in most of these videos, which is, you know, a lot of these rules, these NPCs, Bestiary, Feondas, you know, things that it gives you to use are examples. They're basically there for you to use, but also to make your own and elaborate on. They're there as a tool so you can make more of it or use it to come up with your own ideas, basically. So let me read this so it just kind of drives that home, and then we'll get into it a little more. But the animal templates detailed here are for the most part provided in order to constitute an easily accessible and modifiable database for the leaders. Thus, the characteristics of a wolf can also realistically be used to simulate a wild dog or fox, for example. Such similarities only concern the physical abilities of the animals presented, since behaviors from one species to another differ vastly. And then it also mentions this, I think worth mentioning, the other books of the Shadows of Esteren series, mainly the Book of Secrets, will progressively introduce and develop new species, variants, and creatures, which will diverge more clearly from these archetypical examples. So again, you see this chart here, you see a list of animals: bear, cairneed, kalir, cat, crow, horse, steed, rat, snake, spider, wolf. These are the kind of foundational examples of these genre of bestiary, right? These sort of example animals that then you can spider web off of, or, you know, branch off of, and use these as examples to then modify the different stats and the way that they work in the game, the crunch of it, right, to fit whatever animal you need it to work for. But again, let's just look at this chart. You see the list of animals at the top there. It gives the different statistics for attack, damage, defense, protection, speed, potential, health. Notice the health. On some of the larger animals there, it's broken into the different sections of damage. Make sure you check out the crash course tutorial video I made on healing and alternative forms of damage, because you'll see the chart on healing and how these numbers kind of fit in based on how many points of damage before you move to the next section of healing or damage chart, basically moving your way all the way to agony and death, obviously. But you see health, the different sections. Some of the smaller animals just have 5 points of damage they can take before they die, right? Or 2 in the case of a spider. But then you see stamina, perception, stealth, and feats, which are great domains that they'll probably come into play if you're encountering these animals. And then special abilities, which is fun. It kind of explains those, like rage, swarm, blinding, disease, venom. And just as an example, like as a crow, blinding, right? If they're swarming you or one attacks and they get a critical success, roll a 10 and then a second 10 on that critical success during that attack, they can end up blinding you, basically poking out or clawing out one of your eyes. Yeah, so it can be that brutal, but some of them have special abilities. But again, this isn't the be-all, end-all. This is just a guideline. This is your basic foundation of animals that you can branch off of. All right, let's get into some of these other creatures that it gives examples of in this book 2 Travels. The first being a loxinome. And again, you're gonna see me pronounce these words as best as I can as looking at them, but you know, I don't speak Celtic lore or French or some of these fantastical sort of words. I'm doing my best, but it's not something to get hung up on. I've said it before in previous videos. I'll repeat it again. In this one, the pronunciations are not that important. Make it your own, stick to it, have fun with it, and move on. Don't get hung up on making sure that you're pronouncing everything perfectly. But again, this is a basic sea worm. And this sea worm has a bunch of statistics here, and it also lists some special attack stuff. Each one of these I'm going to go over kind of their special attack or things that it mentions, but know that in the book they elaborate on all this stuff. Like each one of these has its own page or two, you know, where it goes into it. I'm not going to spend hours diving into each one of these things. I'm just going to kind of lightly give you an idea. But this sea worm basically has a special ability to swallow whole. So when it's attacking you, if it gets a natural 10 on an attack, the sea worm swallows its opponent. Yeah, it has to be human size or smaller, and then only a difficult 17 feet roll can avoid being devoured by the body of the creature. Each round spent inside of the sea worm deals 1d10 damage until death comes. So it's basically digesting you every round, 1d10 damage until you die, or until it dies, somebody cuts you out, or you fight your way out, you know, however you can see fit. But yeah, let's check out the artwork. On each one of these, I had to put some of the artwork, right? Because it's one of my favorite parts of Shadows of Esteren is the fact that they put a lot of effort into their original art. It's all original paintings and just amazing work. They have amazing artists. They even put out a whole art book. Check out the style and setting crash course that I put out. I go over that and I show off some of the artwork. But yeah, check out. There's a sea worm, a loxinome. All right, the next thing is a Kana the Gnawer. You see the statistics there. Its special sort of thing is an infectious bite. Kana can carry the canker disease. Make sure you check out the healing and alternate damage crash course, because not only about the healing and the sections of damage, so you better understand that, but also because I go over diseases and healing from that and how that kind of works alongside of normal damage. But ultimately, they carry the canker disease, but it remains rare. Victims of a bite must still get a 4 or more on a luck roll. If they do not, they have been bitten by a disease-bearing Kana. Most of the time, it will be a canker of mild 14 virulence. But it is sometimes more deadly. And again, the virulence levels and all that sort of stuff will make better sense if you watch that other crash course tutorial on healing and alternative damage. But you see here how you basically have to do a luck check and be lucky enough to not be bitten by one that's infected by the canker disease. Otherwise, you get it. Let's check out the imagery for these Kana the Gnawers. Look at that. They look like a type of rat. And something to note here. The first one that I went over, that sea worm, that is a fantastic creature or beast. It is a sea worm. Moving forward, the next handful that I'm going to show you and name, they're considered Feondas. Okay, so this Kana the Gnawer isn't just a weird, crazy-looking rat or a creature that's rat-like. It's an actual Feond. So these Feondas are, as you see, kind of like mutated or demonic-looking sort of rat beasts. And they're larger than normal rats, it looks like to me, based on that skeleton that's there. That looks like it might be like a cat or a dog size or something, maybe a little bigger. But yeah, pretty brutal, pretty good chance of being infected with disease, something you want to avoid. The next example of a Feond is Snaggin. A Snaggin the mud crawler. Now this thing, its special thing is a toxic cloud. Requires a complicated 14 stamina roll, or it inflicts a -3 penalty on every physical action for 1d10 rounds. If contact is made with the cloud when underwater, the toxic is partly diluted and the stamina rolls lower to a standard 11. So yeah, if it's out of water or in water, it's basically going to change from complicated to standard, from 14 to 11 on that stamina check. Otherwise, you get that -3 penalty on all physical actions for 1d10 rounds. Yeah, and that's its special toxic cloud. That's aside from, you know, biting, hitting you, other things it can do You know, like I said, each one of these, it goes into all kinds of descriptions. You can see the statistics there of its health, its attack. I mean, this is a pretty beastie Feond. It's pretty tough. And let's move on to the next one. And that one had the image right there with the description and stats. But let's check out Meal Tag the Vampire Bat. Basically, their special thing is blood sucking on a natural 10 for an attack of vampire, and this is brutal. Look how it clings, and that's very difficult to get off. But on a natural 10 for an attack, a vampire bat clings to its victim and starts sucking its blood. During the following rounds, it inflicts the same amount of damage points as on the initial attack without having to roll again. Damage is inflicted as long as the meal tag is alive or until someone, who can also be the victim, tears it away, which requires a difficulty 17 feats roll. Tearing it away also deals the same amount of damage that the victim got it during the initial attack. So whatever that initial attack damage is, you take that damage, it's clinging onto you. Every round it's dealing that damage, sucking your blood until you either kill it or yank it off by doing that feats, difficulty 17, you or somebody else. And even when you yank it off, it does more damage as you're pulling it out, I imagine, because the fangs are ripping out of your body, you know. Let's look at the image of this meal tag vampire bat. Yeah, you know what I like about this is it reminds me of the Kana the Gnar. It's almost like a flying version. Look at these Kanas, which are kind of like the Feond rat version sort of thing. And then look at these. Look how similar, but flying, right? Like a bat version, a rat version. And again, they are Feonds. So very brutal, very dangerous, pretty strong too. And especially when you look at that original animal chart. Look at like a normal bat versus these meal tag the vampire bats. The statistics, you know, they're much beefier, much more brutal attack. And then they have that special sort of attack where they just latch on you, sucking your blood. But all right, let's get into the next one. A Nim Quell. That's what I'm going with. I don't speak French fluently, but I'm pretty sure that's not Cuillère, it's Quell. But a Nim Quell is basically, as you see here, a poisonous plant. So it's a Feond that is flora-based. So flora-based Feond, basically plants. And they have some pretty interesting special attacks here. And what I like about this is you can, you know, I can already think of creative ways to alter these special things, whether it be the poison or hallucinogenic, and then the way that the plant looks. I'll show you the imagery, but man, just think of the possibilities with this being a flora-based Feond. But poison, basically, the virulence of the toxin produced by the poison plants varies from one species to another, as does the incubation time until the appearance of the first symptoms. Most Nims Quells produce poisons of mild virulence, which take effect within seconds. Failing a complicated 14 stamina roll immediately inflicts 10 poison points. And then it has hallucinogenic too, which it goes on to talk about how long the hallucination might last, mental resistance roll to get out of it, whether you're in the pollen range or you stay in it or get out of the pollen. Like I said, I could see coming up with alternate versions of this where maybe it's like it shoots like little thorn darts. Maybe it's not pollen dust. Maybe it's something like a toxin when you touch the leaves, right? Maybe it's some type of like Venus flytrap version where it like bites you and it has like a form version of like that sea worm swallowing whole, or maybe also poisoning you. I don't know. Man, plant version Feonds just seem really fun and crazy. But yeah, let's check out the image there. Look how sleek that looks. I really like that image. It just looks, you know, sharp and evil and yet kind of, I don't know, provocative in a way. Really dig it. All right, this next one, one of my favorites, and in the description it kind of breaks down something which I really enjoy that sheds some light in general to these Feonds. But first, yeah, Lady Fur Patience. The special thing here is Bone Arrow. Fur Patience can replace a standard attack with the use of a projectile extracted from her own body. She sticks a hand into her flesh, which opens effortlessly and draws out a sort of sharp arrow made from a substance between wood and bone. She can throw it as far as 12 yards with a simple flick. Just think of how badass that is, right? And then vegetal propagation is something it also can do. Let's see here. With a mere stroke, the Lady of the Torn Woods is able to trigger the lush growth of wild grass, stringy lichen mushrooms, or strands similar to the silk of an insect's cocoon. She can use that to hide, which increases her stealth. She can use it to kind of grapple up the enemy, which requires physical resistance, a difficulty 17 stamina or feats roll necessary to free yourself, kind of like getting caught in a spiderweb. And the thing to take note of here, you might have noticed I said the Lady of the Torn Woods instead of saying Lady for Patience. Listen to this. The drain of the Torn Woods on the island of Calvary is called Fur Patience and is reminiscent of a melancholic lady, a macabre beauty lost in a madness she soothes with long walks amidst a tormented but pristine nature. The lady watches over her domain and seems curiously attached to the ancient stones. It goes on, but anyways, you see it's basically the island of Calvary. There is a lady for patience, that breed, if you will, right? That type of Feond. But specifically, it's the drain of the Torn Woods. And then it makes reference to that in that particular Lady for Patience's special ability, not just the bone arrow, which seems kind of general to the Lady for Patience, but that one in particular, the Lady of the Torn Woods, has that vegetal propagation. That's how it kind of reads. So I wanted to point that out because as I'm kind of giving all these examples, these different types of Feonds, they're kind of categories of Feonds, right? So like, yeah, that Gnar or that vampire bat, there's probably different versions of that depending on where you are in Tree Gazelle and how they're influenced, or maybe different time frames, how ancient, how modern, how morphed, how warped, how evil. And that's what I love about Feonds, is they can be anything. Make sure you check out the deep dive I did on Feonds. It's posted on the Cybernation Uncensored channel. You can also get to it by checking out the playlist in this video at the end. It should pop up. Also, there should be some links in the description. But I go over how Feonds can be anything, and I love how this gives that example because it references one in particular that's on the island of Calvary. But check that out. Let's look at the imagery. And the imagery, this is why this one is one of my favorites. Look how fucking evil that is. Excuse my French. Speaking of a French company. But yeah, look at how badass this Feond looks. Just coming out of the vegetation. It's like half morphed in, half coming out. You can see it's got like feminine features. You imagine it's huge, almost part of this huge vegetation, because it did describe pulling out this sort of arrow bone wood thing and just flicking it. Can go like 12 yards just with like a flick. So it's not even like throwing. It's like, I just imagine it reaches in and like an arrow size flick is like a toothpick based on the size of this Feond. But they can also be small. There can be multiples of them. Maybe it's multiples that gather to create this one and then break down into individual plants or something. Hey, Shadows of Esteren is an open world here in that sense, and that's why I think you should check out that deep dive on Feonds. Make it your own. They can literally be anything, and that's what makes them so evil and dangerous. But all right, let's get into the next one. This is the last one that's listed in Book 2 Travels, and that is the Siren of the Teal'daroth. This is a siren. And yeah, it mentions a certain song here. Elon, you can look that up on YouTube. A perfect track to illustrate the horrific encounter with a siren. I'm not going to play that because I don't want copyright issues. But what I am going to play, let's see here, is Requiem. And I'm going to go over the special things. I'll talk about it. But let's get Requiem going first. There we go. Requiem is basically... There we go. Requiem is basically one of the tracks in the sound sets on Sirenscape. You've probably heard me mention Sirenscape multiple times on gameplay and different things. I love it. They're an official sponsor of Cybernation Uncensored. They really make gameplay immersive, and they have specific sound sets for different games. They have licensed sound sets for specific campaigns and games, as well as community-made ones, all kinds of great stuff, individual samples and things you can trigger during gameplay. It's amazing. And right now I'm just generally playing the track Requiem, and I'll get into that in a moment. I'll explain why, because they have all the different tracks for Durg, one of the campaigns for Shadows of Esteren. It's right there in Sirenscape. So check out Sirenscape. The link is in the description of this video. But yeah, look at a Siren of the Teal'daroth. It has Bewitchment. So basically coming within 30 feet of a siren is extremely dangerous. Complicated 14 mental resistance, or you become enchanted. You imagine it's like a siren, right? And then here's Requiem. Requiem, the song of the siren is a strange melody, inhuman but capable of hypnotizing those who hear it and making them fall in a sort of hallucinated daze. Then it goes on to that for how many minutes and things. Each one of these has its own sort of thing, whether bewitchment and control or requiem going into a daze. But I just wanted to take that moment so I could play Requiem on Sirenscape. But there you go. Let me stop that from playing. Let's show the imagery of this siren, because the artwork in Shadows of Esteren is just so amazing. Look at that. Just imagine that coming out of the water while you're trying to traverse. How scary and terrifying. And you know, you're hearing the kind of music and it's singing as you're approaching, and some of you are getting enchanted, some aren't in the party because whether they're failing or succeeding on their mental resistance checks and stuff. I don't know. Siren just seems really fun for a Feond. But again, you can make these Feonds your own, as I've just explained in the description there, and as you see in the book, and you should have watched that Feond deep dive. But there you go. There's some bestiary that you can use, found in Travels, Book 2, and some examples of more Feonds. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment, give us a share. Let's give more attention to Shadows of Esteren by Studio Agate. I absolutely love this game. I'm sure you do too. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.
Cybernation Uncensored.